Looks the same.
I would call to order the Village of Westmont Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for its Wednesday, December 7th meeting at 7 o'clock at the Village Hall. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael.
Here.
Commissioner Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Van Buren is here. Commissioner Pill.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Bartel.
Here.
And Chairman Richard.
Here.
We have a quorum.
If you would please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While I have you all standing, please, if you would, anybody that's going to give any testimony either for or against any agenda, you got to be sworn in. So if you just raise your hand, won't hurt. I swear that any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. There should be a sign-in sheet on the podium there when you come up to talk. I would ask that you also silence any and all electronic devices. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of November 9th. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. Question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel.
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael.
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay, the minutes of November 9th are hereby adopted and approved. First item, open hearing, new business, planning and zoning item 16027, Clark and Karen Newarth, regarding the property located at 310 South Hudson Street for the following. A zoning code variance request to allow for construction of a home addition within a required front yard setback in the R3 Single Family Detached Residence District. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Yes, we'd like to improve our property and hopefully home value by implementing a plan where we would demolish our existing detached garage, a shed that's at the corner of the back of the property, much of a patio that currently exists, and then much of the asphalt driveway that goes from the front of the property almost all the way to the back to the detached garage. We believe this would enhance our backyard and give us a lot more area that we could use for landscaping, beautification, etc. Our plan is to build a new attached garage on the south side of the property attached to the home. And we would also include in this plan a new entry on the east or street-facing side of our property, which would include a small covered porch that we'd like to add. And those are the two things where the setback we're asking for the variance on. So we would need a 4-foot setback for the covered porch and then a 5-foot setback variance for the new garage. In accordance with the format of the variance application, we've addressed the 3 responses to the findings of fact for the variation. The first one, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it's located. Many of the homes in our neighborhood have street-facing entries with porches, and we would like ours to be aesthetically attractive in that same way. And secondly, many of the homes have attached garages, and we'd like to keep pace with market, and that's why we're asking for these. We'd like to make these proposed improvements, and why we're asking for the variance. Part B, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. We looked and had an architect make drawings of our property with a front door on the east side of the property, and without putting some type of architectural enhancement to that, it may not look very good to just have a door underneath the overhang of the existing roof. So that's where we came up with a plan to add the small front porch. And then secondly, our current front door is actually a side door to the living room of the property. And where we want to attach the garage, if we didn't bring the front of the garage to the front of the property, the current setback of 30 feet, we would no longer be able to use that side door, and we would have no entry to the house, and still be able to park a vehicle in the garage without moving that doorway completely to a different location. We believe that would upset the flow of the natural flow of the house, of where we enter and leave. And then also it would be somewhat cost prohibitive because there would be a lot of construction involved just to move that doorway. So those are the two explanations for the two variances there. And then finally, the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Again, our architect has provided drawings as to what the property would look like with the attached garage, and then also with the front porch added as well. Thank you.
Hey, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just elaborate on some of the processes and some of the things that were missed in the explanation. Newhorse probably started working with staff 3 or 4 months ago. Initially, this project was looking at adding the garage and not addressing lot coverage, and I just want to touch on lot coverage for a moment. Lot coverage, there's no lot coverage variance being requested tonight. Initially, when this project came in the door, staff did an analysis on what was on the lot, what was to remain, and what was to be built. And it basically came up with a lot coverage of 50%. Now, 35% is what's permitted in the village, with an administrative approval to 40% in certain situations. This would not have been permitted in that situation. The applicants were fully instructed on a lot coverage variance would be requested in addition to any other variances that were going to be presented tonight. The applicant responded by saying, there's something good in bringing ourselves back into compliance. So they revised their plan. They're removing much more than was initially done, including removal and replacement of their driveway with permeable pavers to bring them down to 32%. So that gives them a little flexibility in the future for a deck, a shed, something. So in terms of stormwater management and hearing staff and responding to staff, they've done an excellent job with that. So what's before you is a variance for the front porch. You've heard the applicant mention the garage as well, and I'll touch briefly on that second. To reconfigure and take away the side entry door, which is actually their front door on their split level, they need to figure out where to put the front door. That's going to be on the front of the house. And initially, there were no discussions of a porch covering. By right, they're allowed to have a 100-square-foot landing because our code basically permits an encroachment to any door in the front yard that you should be able to enter and exit and be able to put a chair or two out there or have a front porch. It's the covering that becomes part of the primary house and brings up the setback issue. So by adding a 5-foot or 4-foot, as he indicated, covering, it brings the house to a 25-foot setback. The house is currently at 30, so it already exceeds the 35, which is permitted. If you remember, a few months ago, staff did have we did amend our code, so there were exceptions to let other houses come up to 25 feet. The neighboring house is at 30 feet as well. So that exception that if the other houses are closer on either side of you does not apply here. So that's why he's before us today. The garage formally is at 30 feet with the same setback as the house, but it is the leading edge of the front porch that drives the variance request tonight. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this issue either for or against? Seeing no hands raised, we'll close the public comment. We'll start with Doug Carmichael, if you would, please.
I have no comments other than it looks like a well-thought-out project and to fit your lot in your house. And I wish you luck with it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Van Buren?
I too feel I don't have a problem with it. It looks like you've been very diligent in your planning and also in cooperating and seeing that lot coverage is, the issue is taken care of, and it looks like it's going to be a real attractive addition, and I congratulate you.
Commissioner Pill?
I also think that this looks great. I think it's in keeping with the neighborhood. I appreciate the reduction in lot coverage and the use of the permeable pavers. I think that's a great way to further enhance the area, and our entire village has had some water issues over the years in various parts. That area drains to the south, as you're probably aware, and so by reducing by close to 18% lot coverage, I think that's going to help the entire neighborhood, not just your home. I also appreciate you going through the findings of fact in detail. We don't often get that and have to pry it out, so that was nice to hear that. I do have one question that's not germane to tonight's actual variance, but as planning and zoning commissioners, you wouldn't be asking for the variance if you weren't going to put up the garage. So I'm just curious, and more to enter it into the public record, the south wall of the garage is going to be somewhere, it's hard to tell because your drawings weren't designed to emphasize this, but near the wooden fence, I would assume, or at least parallel to it. And I'm just curious if there's any structural support issues, or if that's going to cause a roll-off drainage into drain pipes. I guess it's your 5 feet down at the bottom there?
And it's 6 feet.
6 feet,
It's
so
6 feet.
6 feet down and 5 feet wide?
No, it's about 4 feet down.
4 feet down and 6 feet wide.
to the
So-
property line.
I just, because you do have a neighbor right down there.
Right, yeah.
I certainly don't want to see everything rolling off of a garage roof into a couple drain pipes and then shooting down right into their basement.
Right.
So I would assume you're thinking about that and
Absolutely.
going to consider that and reroute that water. And is there a structural issue there, or because you've already got the driveway, it's fine?
There's currently a retaining wall that
I saw that.
supports the driveway, and that's something that we would need to replace anyway. So the footings and foundation of the new structure will actually serve as that wall for most of the length back to the current garage. Behind that new structure, we will landscape appropriately to make sure that the ground is held and that our yard is flat and retains the water. In fact, we've had numerous discussions with our neighbors
Okay.
directly to the south and to the south of them.
Okay.
And this plan is actually aimed at trying to help them as much as possible.
That's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. I wish you the best of luck with this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas?
I appreciate you working with staff and not coming in, I want, but let's do something that works, and if you really feel you need a front door, yes, you do.
There's always a chimney.
But I support it 100%, and I appreciate you looking out for your neighbors also, and good luck.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yeah, I just would echo the same comments as other commissioners. I think that this project will actually bring the property more into compliance with zoning ordinances and is therefore kind of an easy decision for me to make, and I wish your project the best of luck.
Commissioner Bartel?
I echo the other comments from the other commissioners. A very nice house, and I certainly support the idea. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
I really like the pavers that you put in. I think it's going to look out nice. I did have a question.
Okay.
Your Commissioner Pill alluded to part of it, your south fence, where the garage is going to be. Is that fence going to remain?
No, it will not.
So that part of the fence is going to come out where the garage is going to be built?
Correct.
Okay, I do have, Commissioner Pill brought up a good point, though, about drainage off of your garage. The way it looks, you're going to have a rain gutter over there.
Correct.
And it's going to have a downspout on the southeast corner.
That will run off the front of the garage as it comes down, and it can actually exit onto the front yard. It doesn't have to go onto the
I would
south
ask if
side.
you would consider an impervious pipe, a plastic PVC pipe, carry it out to the front sidewalk.
Okay,
Eliminate having that water. Staff, if you think that'd be a good idea. But that way we keep that water off of that big garage roof from impacting that neighbor. We carry it out to the front sidewalk.
Right along here,
We can look at that as part of the engineering.
right along the south
Yeah.
side of the driveway.
Absolutely.
But I think you would help your relationship with your neighbor tremendously.
Okay.
But other than that, I like your plan, and thank you for working with the village so well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, since we have a request for a variance, may we have a reading of the findings of fact, please?
This is PZ 16-027, Clark and Karen Newhart, 310 South Hudson Street, Westmont. Request for a variance to allow the construction of a home addition that encroaches into the required front yard setback. Criteria number 1, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it is located. Findings of fact, the existing property contains a legal non-conforming front yard setback of 30 feet, currently exceeds the maximum allowable lot coverage, and contains a less than ideal side entrance with a detached garage. The proposed detached garage will match the existing front yard setback, and relocating the entrance to the front of the house with a covered porch entry will add curb appeal and convenience. The applicant could not improve this property as proposed and enhance the neighborhood without this variance. Criteria number 2, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. Findings of fact, the house currently contains a legal non-conforming front yard setback, which the proposed detached garage will match. The owner will reduce lot coverage from approximately 50% to approximately 32%. Criteria number 3, the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Findings of fact, the proposed attached garage and relocated entrance with a covered porch will enhance the property and the neighborhood, and the proposed improvements are consistent with the character of the neighborhood. The owner will reduce existing lot coverage to minimize any stormwater impacts from this project.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement, therefore the findings of fact for a variance are hereby adopted and approved. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, Planning and Zoning Item 16-027, a zoning code variance request to allow for construction of a home addition within a required front yard setback in the R3 Single Family Detached Residence District.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Carmichael, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay, folks, you have our recommendation for approval, but it's only a recommendation. You got to go before the village board and throw yourself on their mercy. But I heard they're in the Christmas spirit, so don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Planning and zoning item 16-028, Aldi Incorporated regarding the property located at 6415 South Cass for the following. Item A, zoning code variance request to allow for construction of a building addition within a required rear yard setback in the B2 General Business District. Item B, a zoning code variance request to increase the number of allowable signs. Item C, site and landscaping plan approval. Ladies, gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking this allowing us this opportunity. My name is Chris Stair. I'm the real estate director with Aldi out of the Batavia, Illinois division. We are here this evening before you as we would like to look at remodeling and adding on to the square footage of our existing store here in Westmont. Aldi's is going through actually a national expansion remodel program around the entire country. They want us to have all 1,500 stores remodeled in the next 3 years. So I'm glad I only have the Batavia division and not the rest of the country. No, it's a great thing that we're doing. With this remodel, as you'll see on the site plan that we've provided, we are looking to do a backroom expansion at this location. The remodel program that we're rolling out is being done because of the fact that we're obviously always evolving our product line. And in order to accommodate what we're trying to do now and into the future, we need additional square footage of the store so that we can expand our sales floor area to bring in more fresh products, more refrigerated products, things of that nature. The remodels that we're doing around the country, we look at each store individually. Some stores we're expanding long walls where we're taking off the first aisle wall and blowing it out to add another aisle to the store. Other stores we're taking the short wall up in the front of the store and blowing that wall out so that we can expand the store again to get the space that we need. At this location, we looked at those two options and really felt that those two options won't work for a couple of reasons. One, it would have a detrimental impact on our parking. And two, if we did the short wall expansion, it would obviously impact that shared access drive that we have with our neighbor to the south. So we couldn't do that as well. So in order to get this store to where we can meet the needs that we need to obtain corporately, the backroom expansion was the only option that we have at this location. If we don't, or if we can't expand any store, then we obviously got to look to relocate those locations. So at this point, this store, we know that we're going to need a setback variance for this location. Again, the reason that we want it, that we're requesting this setback variance is so that we can improve the shopping experience for the customers here in Westmont by being able to provide the products and things that we're going to be rolling out across the country. The site that's the school, I guess the school behind us, I know that property is zoned residential, but there is no residential behind us. It is a school. And so we don't really feel like there's any kind of negative impact regarding the school. And at this point, too, we have not heard we've actually reached out to the school ourselves and have not received any comment back, negative or positive. We just haven't got any response at all from them on that. And then the requested variance, even with this variance, we still maintain a 20-foot setback from the building to the current fence line that's there now. And then these guys will kind of I'm going to have Tom, the construction manager for Aldi, kind of talk more about the scope of the building, the elevation, signage. And then Nikki, our engineer, will address the site plan, landscaping, and detention, and things of that nature.
Hi, my name is Tom Schraman, a construction manager with Aldi. I'm going to talk about the exterior scope of work. The exterior scope of work includes remodeling the front entry to remove the existing stucco with aluminum composite metal panels, and then with replacing the 2 existing Aldi signs, and also adding the 2 food market signs, which is another variance we're looking for. And we believe the new signage is relatively small in area in relation to the overall size permitted by the Westmont sign ordinance. And we also believe that this will be an impressive improvement over the existing conditions that are currently out there. The interior will also be remodeled, and the interior scope includes new finishes, new graphics, new paint, and just new layout per our operations plan. You want to take it away?
Hi, my name is Nikki Kammerer. I'm the civil engineer with RWG Engineering. And so, as you can see from the site plan, the expansion proposed for the store will only affect that back corner of the property. The expansion will be going out into what is currently grass area. And with that, under Westmont's code, additional detention would be required. And although it's minimal, there was storm trap underground concrete vault detention provided when the site was built down at the south end of the property under the parking lot. And after reviewing the detention that was required and provided at that time, there is sufficient storage available. So this expansion will not have any negative drainage impacts. The detention is already out there provided today. And the request is for the 20-foot setback as opposed to the 40-foot that's out there now. And in an effort to buffer that area, landscaping is proposed to go in there, some trees, and we've got some shrubs proposed along the north side of the building. And the approved landscape plan, when it was originally built, there are some deficiencies to what's out there now. Things have died and not been replaced as they died. And, you know, with this improvement, Aldi will come in and they will bring everything back up to what the original approved landscaping was, you know, at the time of construction with this. And I think that's pretty much it. Do you have anything else to add?
Anything further? Okay, staff comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just touch on a couple of things and elaborate on a couple of things. So they are asking for 2 variances. The rear yard setback variance. So when this project went in approximately 2005, 2006, the required setback variance based on the width of the lot was 60 feet. They received a variance at that time to build at 40 feet. I just briefly want to explain where the 60 feet comes from. If this were a commercial property abutting the backyard, the setback requirement would only be 20 feet. The way that our code reads, it says that when it's a residentially zoned property, then you have to abide by the residential standards, and the residential standard is at 20% of your lot depth. So you'll note in the staff report that we did make comment that it is a school behind here. It is not a residential property. I think that the intent of the code is that if you have a home abutting a commercial property, you don't want the backyard to be filled with noise, debris, everything that comes with living next to a residential property. So in terms of noise generation, in terms of structure being too close to someone's back patio or such, this does not seem to meet that. Now, that said, it is still an encroachment into the setback to 20 feet. The applicant has worked diligently with staff. Staff had a lot of concerns with the existing landscape there. You'll note that a lot of the cases we brought to you in the last few months, we go out and we look at the existing approved plan. Have they met it? Is it deficient? Does something need to be done? And this is a case that clearly, over time, plant material has been lost and not replaced. So not only will we be holding the applicant to make sure that they maintain their existing landscape plan, they have planted a lot of trees on the backside of the building where there are virtually none that exist now. And then they also have done a lot of foundation plantings as well. So there is a lot of landscape that they're proposing for this addition, in addition to bringing the rest of the site back up to the required standards. They touched briefly on the stormwater. Our staff and our consultant has looked at that and agrees that it can be accommodated on site with a few minor modifications to their facilities. Now, whenever you're adding square footage, even if this is storage area, it's square footage, it does affect their parking counts. So when you're adding 1,400 square feet, it creates a new parking demand. Basically, that increases, they need 89 spaces. They have nowhere to put these spaces. So the solution they're proposing is that they're going from 10-foot wide spaces to 9-foot wide spaces. That would require a waiver request to the board because that is an engineering standard that they're modifying. That does allot them the extra spaces that they need to have this increased square footage. Because they could not find the space to add parking without taking away landscape. And as always, staff is available for questions.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the public comment. Anybody from the public? Seeing no hands raised. We will start with Commissioner Bartel.
Well, it's a great project, and I know there's one in Darien that's being rehabbed as well. So obviously this is something for all of the Aldis in the area. The parking spaces appear to be adequate. One question I had was, when I visited there, the snow removal. What is your process? We've had a lot of snow here, which is not that abnormal, and the snow was actually butted up against the east fence. So will there be some thought process relative to removal during the construction, depending on when it starts, and also subsequent years? That would be one thought.
Yeah, during construction, definitely. These guys will be making sure that there's no issues with the snow. After construction's over, I will definitely address that with our operations team, since they're the ones responsible for setting all that up, but I don't see an issue with why they can't come up with some program for that.
Okay. The stormwater facilities sound adequate. That's always a concern. Will you remain open during construction like the one in Darien? And if so, is there adequate walling off by plastic so that the people in the store are not inhaling construction dust, et cetera?
Yes, there will be a temporary 1-hour partition installed at the expansion area with a vapor barrier stud wall to separate the construction dust, and the GC would also provide a negative air machine, essentially to keep, the dust down. And, basically on all these projects we have, we're using some of the same general contractors, so they're pretty efficient on, minimizing disturbance with customers.
Okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could first ask staff a question about how we are coming up with the landscape requirements for the additional foundation planting.
Foundation plantings, and actually, when you're looking at landscape, if this was a new build, we would look at the total square footage. Then you basically have the square footage, and you have to figure out what is the open space. From there, from the open space, it's determined it's a 50% requirement that is required to be landscaped. And then from that, there's a calculation based on square footage for both trees and shrubs. And then we have a separate section in our code that says that if nature abuts the building, then there should be foundation plantings. It shouldn't just be grass that comes up to it. In this case, we're basically trying to work with the applicant in that we've got an existing building that had landscape standards that were applied to the building that were different than what we have now. So we did initially look at the entire project, and then in working with the applicant, we felt it was appropriate to look at just the square footage of the addition. And what we did is we said, okay, if it's all based on square footage, we will back out 1,400 square feet of landscaped area, which is essentially what's happening. And that 1,400 square feet of landscaped area would have required, I think, the 28 shrubs. And then we said, if you put those as your foundation plantings, you're meeting the requirement. We did a similar calculation on trees, but because trees are the primary screening element, they had already provided enough screening trees to exceed the tree count.
Okay. I think the reason I asked the question was it seems that the existing, or the addition that's on the east side has all these foundation plantings pretty dense, and I'm not talking about the tree. I think the trees are a great thing to separate visually, to create a little barrier, even though there is a fence there adjacent to the school. It seems like the foundation plantings could be better utilized somewhere in the front of the building, or at least the side of the building where it is just hardscape right up against the building, or even the north side where it's landscape but there's not any new planting shown there. It seems like there's room, so you're already restriping the lot, right? So it seems like there's room to actually kind of cut down on the aisle width against the building, and maybe that's, we probably have standards for our stalls that are 20 deep, maybe, but if those go to 18, and maybe the sidewalk against that, instead of a 6-foot sidewalk, is a 5-foot sidewalk. So now you have 4 feet against the building that you could actually move all that foundation planting against the facade, street-facing facade, and I think that would be much more sophisticated of a look than just concrete up against the building, if you're gonna have plantings anyways. But I guess that's a thought to the other commissioners, and maybe it's off base or maybe it's not, but it seems like they're misused or underutilized to be just stuffed in the back of the building. I mean, at the very least, they could fill out some of the other planters that are currently existing.
And when staff was working with the applicant, there were discussions about, is that the most appropriate spot? Staff did leave it to the applicant's decision. We had said, whether you fill out existing landscaped areas in the front or put them in the back, we left that to their discretion. This is the design that they proposed.
Okay. I guess my other question to the applicant is, I'm an Aldi shopper, so I'm excited about this, but what are the new services or goods that you guys are planning to use this new space for?
Yeah, we're going to be bringing in a lot more refrigeration, a lot more fresh products, fresh items. Our produce area is expanding and growing. like our bread pastry section is even going to be expanding and growing. We're actually doing some testing in some other markets that I really can't get into, but that eventually will probably roll out nationwide as well. And then just the, trying to think what else there was. Refrigeration, yeah, again, a lot of the fresh, a lot of the gluten-free, a lot of the organic, that's a lot of the items that we're expanding on and growing into.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Commissioner Thomas?
Number one, my wife loves your store. So I'm there a lot. And I understand where your expansion is going. It is the freezer and cooler and everything, just going back there. And luckily you have a school there. That helps. I wish you good luck, and I agree with the planting and that kind of wasted in the back, so it's your store, so do it. That's all I have.
Commissioner Pill?
I don't have any problem with the expansion. I think it's a good idea. I shop down there occasionally, more at a different Aldi's location, but I do notice when I go down there that, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the landscaping is woeful. And it sort of bothers me because I've been on this commission since you first came to town. And to see that it's been let like that, and there's obviously a manager in charge, and I'm sure there's a district or regional manager above, and that's not been taken care of, doesn't lead me to believe that after this is done, it's going to ever continue, since it's been not taken care of for 10 years. And I hate to have to go ahead and we have to have policing for landscaping. It would seem that a building owner and a business owner would want to take care of that on their own. So I also agree with these guys. We're putting a lot of plantings in the back because it's easiest. It's not necessarily the best looking for the property. And I understand wanting to have a clear look at the building, but I also think that having an attractive site, we're looking forward to seeing a complete redevelopment down on that side. You guys started it, Westmont Yard came in, now Mariano's. All of those big strip malls are now for sale. So we're looking for some nice stuff down there, and to shove all the landscaping in the back, or 6 months after construction to let it die and we go another 10 years, I don't think that's what we're looking for. So I'm hoping staff takes note of this, and I'm hoping that we'll have more than just assurances that the landscaping is going to be taken care of, because it certainly hasn't for 10 years.
We will put in the ordinance that it's a requirement that they restore the original landscaping that has died, and then we can discuss about the location of the new shrubs, whether it can go up front, whether that's reasonable, whether they'll survive with salting of the sidewalk and things like that.
Yeah, those are issues too, exactly. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Van Buren?
We too shop regularly at Aldi and really like it. I'm curious, you seem to have been going more into non-food items. That's grown since you came in here. Is that also going to continue to grow?
Non-food, a little bit. I mean, we just recently kind of rolled out a whole new kind of baby line, baby product line, things of that nature that we were lacking on in the past. A lot of the non-food you'll see will be what's considered our Aldi finds or special buy section, where it's basically limited items. They come in and we get new stuff every week, and then it's only good while supplies last. But as far as our core range, there may be a little bit of an addition, but it's more on the fresh side.
I know that you've been given a requirement on parking, but I personally don't like the idea of narrowing the parking space. I see women getting out of there, taking the kids out of the car seats, having to put, and you got cars that close together. You're going to have cars damaging each other's cars, also very inconvenient. Since this is an addition only to the warehousing and not to the merchandising area. I personally would not want to have those parking spaces diminished by that size. I can't see where this is going to bring, it'll increase your storage, but I don't think it's going to increase your traffic to and from the store, even though we have a formula. But personally, I don't like the idea of 9-foot wide spaces. That's all I have.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Well, I agree with that. A 10-foot space is preferable, and, but, you know, to meet the requirement, I don't know what else you can do. And I have to repeat also on it, these foundation plantings at the back there just seem to be filling a regulatory square. Will anyone even see them? And that said, my wife loves to shop. She loves Aldi's, and I haven't seen the inside of a food store in I don't know how many years, and that's fine with me. But I certainly support your project, and I'm glad you're being successful.
Thank you.
I have to put myself in that, I shop at your store. I've been there 2 days a week for the past 15 years, so I'm very familiar with your store.
It's just for samples.
For everybody's purposes, I was there, I think it was a week from Thursday, last Thursday. It was the only time I've ever seen your parking lot absolutely full. Both your north parking lot and your south. Never seen so many cars. In fact, I had to park in your driveway. But I have to echo the sentiments. I talked to staff this afternoon. I myself hate to see the parking lot sizes diminished. Now, staff has told me that we're one of the few villages that still go by 10 by 20. But to be quite honest with you, I really don't see a need for you to increase your parking stalls. Now, if code says you're under, the trustees, I'm sure staff could grant them a variance without going through a whole nother variance. No?
No, if they don't meet the parking requirements, that's a variance.
Okay. But to meet some of your parking requirements, on the south side of your existing building, from the loading dock to where your carts are stored, you could fit 2 automobiles in there quite easily. If they were parked bumper to foot. So they would be parked lineally from east to west, right adjacent to the building. You could fit 2 cars in there quite easily with some markings.
And they do that frequently.
And they do that frequently, but I'm saying, and likewise, right opposite it where your planting is, on the north side of that planting,
This is glass here.
you could also fit 2 more automobiles.
That still leaves these.
But I show you on the map, or can you follow me?
We got it. Yep, we got it. As long as it doesn't interfere with.
But like I say, I favor the 10 by 20 because I hate to see all these cars getting digged. My car's been getting digged. But usually I park way out in the back end of the lot and walk in. I think you're only going to be asking for trouble. Commissioner Sharp started something here, and landscaping. I think it's a complete waste for you to landscape all of those shrubs alongside the new addition. I'd just as soon rather see you rip out that 6-foot sidewalk along the west side of your building. Because anybody that walks on that sidewalk, as they go south, they run into the carts. So they can't even walk that sidewalk into the front of your store. That sidewalk is really useless.
They need it for ADA accessibility. They've got the handicap spots there, and
Yeah,
there has to be a sidewalk.
Although the point about,
Why can't they go in through the parking lot, for crying out loud?
I'm not the ADA.
Yes, you are.
Attorney Zemanek is correct, that's a federal requirement.
Thank God for the federal government.
but I
out there.
would, if I interrupt, I could say that the parking for the carts is an issue. I mean, if they have to actually go back onto onto the site to get into the building, then that does nullify and really doesn't satisfy ADA to start with.
Right.
So,
John, they have handicap parking out in the middle of the parking lot right now. There are 2 of them. There's no sidewalk around them.
Right.
So what's the difference if you rip this sidewalk out here in the face of the building and let these people walk this way?
I don't know. I believe ADA requires at least a portion of the handicapped accessible parking to be adjacent when possible to a sidewalk.
Yeah, so if they're restriping, we would ask them to, for the accessible spaces to be located closest to the entrance and the sidewalk.
I think all 4 of these are closest to the entrance. It's just that the ones in the island is a direct connect to, they're crossing an aisle to get into the building versus actually having to travel down the aisle to get to the building. It's like crossing a street versus having to walk on the street. I think that's the difference.
I think it's absolutely stupid that you need a sidewalk for this stuff. You got a whole parking lot. They can walk in with their chair or whatever they have. But I would strongly like to see landscaping put in the front of your building. Rip that sidewalk out of there and take this landscaping from that you're gonna put in the back of the addition, because the only thing across from you is the school parking lot. And those automobiles don't care if they look at your landscaping.
Yeah.
Likewise, you also show a couple of big trees back there. I'd like to see, if nothing else, put one of those big trees in this big planting from the front of your, the length of your parking, not parking, the unloading area. Can you fit those 3 big trees in there to enhance that look?
Where exactly?
You show one big tree in the planting where your island is adjacent to the school.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you go back to the new construction, there's 2 more trees back there. Those trees are a waste back there. Why don't you move them forward? Move them more southerly.
Still on that side, but just
Still
to
on
the
that side,
south.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Then you show some lower shrubs in there, fine, that's fine, all well and good, but this whole line of very fine, small shrubs, they should be on the north side of your building. We need that for our streetscape. That's what the village is trying to improve. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes. And just to go back to touch on the parking, we can definitely look at moving the handicap parking stalls. My understanding of the ADA requirements more has to deal with the proximity, it should be close to the front door, which, even those stalls on the south side of the building are in close proximity. And as long as we can maintain a 2% maximum slope, and we would provide a striped crosswalk from those parking stalls to the front door. So, we can look into rearranging the parking stalls.
So you would take the handicap spots that are out in the lot toward the southerly lot?
No, the ones to
remove
the-
those and put them,
Yeah, we can move.
Move those.
move the ones that are up against the west side of the building?
It's something, we can look into that and see, the handicap parking stall widths, it's a total of 16 feet, 8-foot striped and 8-foot parking, whereas the other stalls are 9 foot. So it's not an even swap, but we've got that striped area in there. So, we can see what we come out with as far as the number of stalls by moving them over in that area. Yeah, as long as the slope
But
works
you
out there.
do see our concern about the landscaping for the
Yes,
streetscape.
yes.
That's quite important to us.
Right, yeah, we can take a look
Yeah,
at
we'll take a
that.
look at that.
Next month, you won't have to worry. Trump's gonna fix all that stupid ADA stuff. I said it and I mean it. Okay, any further comments, commissioners? We have a request for 2 variances. We'll have a reading of the findings of fact. Shed. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I just had one question to the commission. Since it is a site plan review, do we need to make that a requirement of approval?
The minutes are going to reflect that. I think staff will work with them. I think they'll go back and try and redesign it.
Message is there.
Message is there, and I'll make sure, depending on what shakes out, that I guess I won't have to put in an ordinance. It'll be hopefully reflected on a revised site plan. I think the question is that a big enough concern where you want it to come back to you, or do you trust that they can redesign that and go straight to the village board? It's a pretty minor.
Okay. No, I don't think we need to see it again.
I would have no problem with it. Okay, as I was speaking, though, the reading of the findings of fact will cover both variances. So if we could have a reading of the findings of fact for variance, please.
This is PZ 16-028, Aldi Incorporated regarding 6415 South Cass Avenue, Westmont. Request for variances to allow a building addition which encroaches into the rear yard setback and increase the number of allowable signs. Criteria number 1, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it is located. Findings of fact, the proposed building expansion meets the traditional B2 rear yard setback of 20 feet, but does not meet the supplemental setback required when such a property abuts a residentially zoned property. In this case, Aldi's store abuts a school use in a residential zoning district and does not abut any residential homes. The addition will be screened by enhanced landscaping and an existing fence. The applicant cannot expand in any other direction without eliminating needed parking or essential drive aisles and cannot yield a reasonable return without the setback variance. The applicant proposes to add 2 new tasteful wall signs to identify a new segment of its business, and the applicant's total signage will be less than the maximum allowed square footage for the property. The applicant cannot yield a reasonable return without the sign variance. Criteria number 2, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. Findings of fact, although the rear yard setback variance is required because the property abuts a residentially zoned property, the adjacent property is improved with a school use instead of residential homes. The sign variance is required to sufficiently advertise a new segment of applicant's business. Criteria number 3, the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Findings of fact, the rear yard building addition will abut a school use and will be screened by enhanced landscaping and an existing 6-foot fence. The building addition will meet the traditional B2 rear yard setback of 20 feet and is consistent with surrounding commercial development. The proposed 2 new wall signs are understated and tasteful, and the total square footage of all signage is less than allowed by the zoning ordinance.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement, therefore the findings of fact for the variances are hereby adopted and approved. Okay, I did have one more question for you. On this sheet 101, folks, there's, on the expansion, you've got a line of prototype wall. And I would, clarification on that, if you would, in the new expansion.
Yeah, it's a 20-foot expansion. Oh, yeah.
Do we know what that is? Just idle curiosity.
I think it just pointed the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, I know the expansion is 20 feet, so I have to get clarification as to what that is, or why that, might have been just mislabeled, not pointed, and it should have been pointed to the outside wall.
Okay. That's just my curiosity. I'm sorry. All right, we have a reading of the findings of fact have been approved under Planning and Zoning Item 16028. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. Item A, zoning code variance request to allow for construction of a building addition within a required rear yard setback in the B2 General Business District.
So move.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. Question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Van Buren votes yes, and Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. Item B, a zoning code variance request to increase the number of allowable signs.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Van Buren, seconded by Commissioner Carmichael. Question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
Yes. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. Item C, Site and Landscaping Plan Approval.
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Sharp. Question on the motion? Recognizing the fact that staff is aware of our concerns on landscaping plan. Okay. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have our recommendation. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Really? Probably. Commissioners, any commissioner comments, notes? Staff?
I'd like to have another warm welcome for Mike Todorovic for.
Thanks for having me.
Civil engineer, who's, this is his first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with us. And then we'd also like to congratulate Craig Thomas on his 15-year anniversary with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I hardly twitch at all anymore.
And happy holidays to all of you.
Forget happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn?
Ho, ho, ho.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bartel, seconded by Commissioner Sharp. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.